Now, One Piece is known for always moving us emotionally, but there's some moments that are just special to me personally when it comes to emotional moments in One Piece. Kind of like Soul King Brook, yes, Brook's flashback, where it felt like the Titanic, where the ship was sinking and the crew was dying and like using their instruments and singing their songs. Benkisake. Honestly, Brook's moment is very sad. There's also, of course, the moment of Bon Clay sacrificing himself for the rest of the escapees to actually get out of prison, especially Luffy, and went up against Magellan. That was a crazy moment by Bon Clay. Bon Chan, they're all crying, it was so epic. Or the Celestial Dragon, who of course shot Hachi, and of course that led to Luffy doing the amazing punch right straight to his face, which we all loved and enjoyed. It was very satisfying. Or even Whitebeard dying standing up with no wounds on his chest, all on his back. I mean, no wounds on his back, all in front of him, meaning he never ran away from the fade, he never ran away from the smoke. Also, it was an emotional moment as well. Then of course there's moments like Luffy remembering his crew when Jinbei's trying to get him to snap out of it after Ace's death. And that moment where he remembers his crew was just like also a very impactful emotional moment. There's also the flashback of course Fisher Tiger's death, when he wouldn't accept human blood. That's how far gone he was. And Fisher Tiger was one of the best fishermen when it comes to injustices and equalness, and like how he saved all the slaves and how he treated Koala. Yeah, intense. Or of course the end of the Fishman Island arc, when Luffy and Jinbei share blood, a significant moment in human and fishman relationship ties, and that's all that Otohime wanted, so it was pretty cool to see them share blood as well. A very emotional moment as well. Or of course one of our favorites, Raizo is safe. The moment where we found out that the minks were lying the entire time. They even fooled me, yo. I didn't think they were gonna ride out that hard, where they were literally telling Jack and getting tortured and losing limbs and dying, but they were not going to snitch on Raizo. Amazing. Or Luffy versus Sanji. I think Luffy versus Sanji is probably like top 3 most saddest moments in the story, when Luffy and Sanji are fighting, and of course Sanji just beating on Luffy, and then in the end when Luffy says Sanji like pretty much calls out to Sanji, and Sanji starts crying. Epic moment right there in the story. Now this is not a sad moment, but Big Mom eating her family. When Big Mom eats her family, like Mother Caramel and her fellow orphans, it's not really sad, it's more so an emotional chill. It gave me a chill down my spine when she did that. It was very eerie. It's still an emotional moment to me. But the ultimate emotional character to me personally is Kuma. From protecting the Sunny after the time skip, with getting so much damage over the 2 years, and Frankie just walking up and seeing his damaged body and mission complete. Definitely a very impactful moment for me personally. Or seeing him as a slave and being rode on, like that was crazy too, when the Celestial Dragon was riding Kuma as a slave, of course, which was messed up, especially now seeing him growing up and losing his mom because of the Celestial Dragons, and losing his father because he was doing the Nika dance, and of course being too loud, so Celestial Dragon shot him right in front of Kuma, and Kuma's just crying through his eyes and just dealing with all that pain. Or even taking the pain from the old people of his village when he escaped, of course, God Valley. That was pretty sad too, of course, because he's doing it every week, and even Ginny was even crying every single week when he was taking the pain of the old people. That was intense. But honestly, Kuma's most saddest moment to me personally was the last chapter, chapter 1098. That was pretty messed up, and I never seen a character live a life like this, honestly. So today's video is gonna be all about Kuma. It's not gonna be a chapter video, it's gonna be a discussion on Kuma and what I've noticed so far, and it's gonna all make sense if you stick to the end of the video, guys. Something that I noticed is when Kuma's first introduced in the One Piece story, he's introduced with another warlord, and that's Doflamingo. And I think that's very impactful because Doflamingo is a celestial dragon, and of course one of his relatives recently actually died to Figurland Garling in the One Piece story. But the reason why it's so impactful is because Kuma's relationship with celestial dragons has always been negative, so to see him walking side by side with a former celestial dragon, Doflamingo, definitely was impactful, and definitely had deeper meaning than what we thought when we first saw it. And of course we later saw Doflamingo and Kuma during Marineford War together, but Kuma has already lost his mind, he was already dead after that, and Doflamingo was explaining that to Ivankov, one of Kuma's best friends. So definitely cool to see how it's like Kuma and Doflamingo as a warlord were very close, but we all know that Doflamingo is the definition of something that Kuma does not like, that celestial dragon who thinks he's on top. In the last chapter, we got the iconic origin of why Kuma always says, if you were gonna go on vacation, where would you like to go? When he asked his daughter Bonney, if you were gonna go on vacation on a trip, Where would you like to go? And she says Sky Islands, yo, so she could see Nika. And I remember when Luffy left Skypiea and we saw that in the sky there was a huge shadow of Luffy jumping in the air, and it kind of reminds me of how Luffy is, of course, having the doubtful ability, the Nika no Mi. So see him in the Sky Island, it reminded me of what Bonney was saying in this chapter. But I think after Elbaf, I think during Elbaf, like at the end of Elbaf, Bonney will get to a Sky Island, like she said as a kid, and she will see Nika, of course, which will be her captain. I think Bonney will join the crew, and Luffy will be her captain, and she'll see Nika. I think she'll see Nika Naked Island, but I think Elbaf will be the significant moment of Sky Island and Nika, and climbing up Jack the Beanstalk and all those references. Bonney also said in the chapter she wanted to go to Fishman Island. We know Luffy's prophecy to, of course, destroy Fishman Island, so I think Bonney being there when Luffy destroys Fishman Island makes a lot of sense. But the reason why I'm mentioning that if you had a trip, where would you like to go, not to get sidetracked, is because Kuma said it throughout the story. He said it to Perona, and Perona was the first character we've seen it being said to, and of course Perona got sent to Dracula Mihawk's island, that fellow warlord's island, where, let's be honest here, she lived there for a while, and definitely it was a good time. It wasn't a bad time for Perona when it comes to in the between of her getting back to Moria. And speaking of Moria, remember when he said it to Moria, and Moria said to Kuma, I know how your powers work, like, come on, if you want to fight, just say it. I thought that was very cool, because like that's deeper now, because it's not just an ability thing, it's more so he actually genuinely asked that question like to Bonney, so it always makes him think of that, in my personal opinion. Or where he sends Zoro after Sabaody, when he saw Zoro still alive after taking all the pain, he sends Zoro all the way to the warlord Mihawk. And you have to understand, the other warlords, it didn't make sense for him to send it to the other warlords, which would of course be which would be Jinbei, who was locked up and impaled down. Of course, there's Blackbeard, who was recently new warlord, who it just doesn't make sense because Blackbeard's beefing, of course, Straw Hat Pirates. And then, of course, there's also Moria, who there's beef there as well. So it just didn't make sense for, of course, the other warlords. It just made sense for Mihawk, of course, for Zoro. It just also the training with the world's greatest swordsman and whatnot. It was just perfect, honestly. And then of course there's Sanji, and Sanji didn't get sent to a warlord, but Sanji got sent to one of Kuma's best allies who escaped God Valley with him. That's Ivankov. Yes, Ivankov was where he sent Sanji, and we all know that. See, Kuma looked at Zoro just like he looked at Sanji in that moment where they were both willing to sacrifice himself for Luffy. So it makes sense. Mihawk and then sent to Ivankov. These are really prominent figures to Kuma in my personal opinion, so it makes sense. And then with Luffy, he sends Luffy to, of course, Amazon Lily, Boa Hancock, and I think you have to understand at the time the only good warlords to me were Mihawk, Jinbei, and Boa Hancock, and Jinbei was locked up, so it makes all the sense in the world for, of course, send Luffy to Boa Hancock. Of course, Boa Hancock used to be a slave, Kuma used to be a slave. I definitely think that Luffy, he sent Nika to a former slave, and they actually bonded, and of course Boa Hancock became obsessed, so Kuma did the right thing here. And then of course when it comes to Robin, Kuma sent Robin to the Revolutionary Army, and they've been looking for Nika Robin, and of course there's Nico Olivia and the connection there, and the poneglyphs and whatnot, and the ancient weapons. So yeah, Kuma definitely knew this is the perfect place for Robin, and it was. And then of course there's Frankie, and Kuma sent Frankie to Vegapunk's former island where he grew up, and Frankie became so much better as a cyborg and technology and whatnot, and building things because of course Vegapunk's technology and the thousands, like things that he would add and things he would do. Yeah, Kuma knew. Okay, and Frankie looks at Vegapunk as an idol, as we saw on Naked Island. And then of course there's Nami, where he sent Nami to, of course, the Weather Island. Nami's a weather ability tax, of course. There's Chopper, who's a doctor, and Medicine, the ultimate medicine island. And then of course there's Usopp, uses plant life for like sniping, and of course he goes to like an island where the plant life could devour you, could destroy you. And Usopp got stronger there as well. He became really better as a fighter and stronger, honestly. So it made sense for the Straw Hats to be sent here as well. Now a lot of people think, what about Brook? What was the reason why he sent Brook to that island? Well, we knew that Brook came to that island and he had conflict with the long arm species, and of course the people there who were like pretty much just like a part of this crazy, like they were worshiping the devil, for goodness sake. So did Kuma have some sort of knowledge about these plot lines? Is there something he knew that was perfect for Brook, or did he just send Brook to a random place? We'll never know. But I think every single place that he did send people was for a reason, honestly. But I want to talk about Kuma and his reaction to, of course, his loved one Ginny. And when she was captured, of course, Kuma was definitely very, very impacted. If you see, he actually went crazy and ended a war that was going on for 3 years, and he went so ham that he was so worn out he couldn't even teleport back to the Revolutionary Army base. He had to take a ship back. Kuma was definitely distraught over Ginny, and he took his anger out on the war he was fighting. But probably one of the most saddest moments in One Piece history, and probably one of the most darkest. Like, we've got teased this when it comes to Doflamingo, which I mentioned earlier, and Violet, but this was not even teased, yo. This was playing out right in our sight, right in our face. We find out that Ginny, of course, was, how do I say this in the nicest way possible, forced to be in a marriage with a celestial dragon, and we all know what that means. Bonney came out of nowhere as a baby, so y'all know how babies come. And what that led to, of course, was Kuma's love of his life being taken away, being forced to another man, and of course then she of course passed away because of an illness. Wow, Kuma's life is sad, very, very sad. My personal opinion, I've never ever rooted for a character to die. Like I've talked about on my channel, like Shanks dying. I thought that would be very important if Shanks dies in the story, or Rayleigh dying, or Garp dying. I've talked about characters dying, or even Usopp when it comes to dying of Brave Way of the Sea, and how it could make sense when it comes to logic. But this is not even logic with me, honestly. Kuma dying has nothing to do with logic. More so, it has to do with just what he's gone through, yo. I think him dying is actually a good thing, because his life has been dog shit, bro. He's had a terrible life, and maybe ending it is better than living that tragic life he's been living. And if I'm being completely honest, he can meet up with Ginny in the afterlife if he believes, since he believes he's so religious with his Bible, carrying his Bible and living in a church. He can meet up with Ginny in the afterlife, because honestly, the world has not been good to him. And I think though before he dies, he needs to see Gear 5th Luffy, because of course Nika and the Gems of Liberation, he has to. And I think before he goes also, it would be cool to see him seeing Saturn pass away or get losing to Gear 5th Luffy, or him doing some damage to Saturn, because we know Saturn, of course, during God Valley when Kuma was a kid, Saturn literally pretty much said, you don't deserve to live, your race is like the worst. He pretty much said your race was the reason why we don't like your race. He was pretty much saying he's born to be a slave in a sense. And then of course I think Kuma confronting Saturn and Aiken Island, then of course Oda killing Kuma. It's not gonna be like an Izo death, which Izo death was pretty cool. It was decent, but post time skip the deaths have not been great. Like Ashura Doji, Pedro, like these sacrifices have not been good. Big Mom and Kaido, we don't even know if they're dead, of course. And there's Useless Kid, who we don't know what happened to him, but he fell in the water, so he is a Delphi user. Is he gonna survive? I think we need a good old-fashioned soldier's death, especially after this amazing Kuma flashback, which hyped up this character. In my opinion, should inspire Dragon to get off his lazy ass and do something, and maybe come to Egghead Island and meet Luffy. But I think Kuma dying is not entirely a bad thing. It's gonna be sad, but I think it's a good thing. I think it will be a happy moment when Kuma dies if he's satisfied, if he sees Nika and he has a moment with Bonney and he gets his, because you understand Kuma's already dead, yo. He lost his memories, he lost who he is. So if Nika's able to regain that for him, then I think it's okay for him to go. And you already know he went from Akainu, of course, and Mary Joa's, and climbed the Red Line, to of course going back to Baltico. He was there as well, and now he's going towards somewhere we don't know. I think it's Egghead Island. So this is a Kuma video, and probably one of my last Kuma videos before he meets his demise.